Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another short show here at the Normalized Money Show. We teach this class every Saturday for 5 to 10 minutes in lieu of the Normalized Money Project, which is an actual night class to teach financial literacy to people who are living in our boutique shelters and our shared houses. The objective of this short show is that you learn what we are doing at the night class, and then you can spend time working on your own homework and lesson plans. I am Kirsten Vanderjack, the founder and CEO of Katie's House Foundation and also the Normalized Money Project. I have on with us today Julie Ferraro. Julie, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. I'm Julianne Ferraro. I am a committee member of the Katie's House Foundation, as well as I've been in law enforcement for 27 years. And I currently am the law enforcement liaison for the Veterans Mental Health and Drug Court in Cook County, Illinois. And what are we talking about today?
So we are talking about still what we cover in class number 1 of the Normalized Money Project night class. Now, this class is intended for teenagers and individuals who have never learned about finance. And so in our last 5 to 10 minute segment, we talked about the first book that everyone listens to for the 16-week course. And now today we're going to talk about the second audiobook that is assigned. Now, this book is called The Laws of Human Nature, and you can get it on Amazon here. I have it pulled up on the screen, and you can get it for free if you sign up for Audible with an email address and then, listen to it versus reading it. The reason that this book relates to money and housing is because in our lifetimes, we are going to come across people who are selfish and also people who repeat the same behaviors over and over again. Do you have any experience with that out on the beat being a police officer?
Yeah, a lot of the people that I would come in contact with would get themselves in a situation and they would, try to tell me that they felt like they either started, going out with this different person or got this other job or did these things so that they would change their situation, that things would be better. But in the end, obviously, when I got involved, they realized that it's actually a worse situation that they've put themselves in, and now they're trying to really figure out how to get out of that situation, and it really puts themselves in a position where they're really down on themselves. They're homeless. They can't stay where they're staying anymore. And we can mention, like, a bad domestic situation and those kind of things, where that's where we have to kind of recognize this maybe before it gets too far into this.
Absolutely. That's why we're talking about it today. I have a story, a real life story that I want to share with everyone. But before I do that, I want to talk about the definition of narcissism. And so if you're not familiar with this term, you can just Google it. And essentially, it means somebody who, is self centered, arising from failure to distinguish the self from external objects, either in very young babies or as a feature of mental disorder. That's one of the definitions. The other one is selfishness involving a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and a need for admiration, as characterizing a personality type. Now, I want to real quickly break down the fact that in this book, The Laws of Human Nature, the author actually talks about humans, right? Because it's the laws of human nature. It's not about placing blame. The book is not about placing blame. It's about humans as an animal species and how we have to recognize our own laws of being a human and then others who we interact with. So that might be your boss that you're interviewing with. It might be someone who you want to date. It could be your parents or your siblings. And maybe they're asking you for money, or maybe they are demanding your time and they are doing things that you feel are unhealthy. And you're recognizing that to be unhealthy. And so that's what we're talking about here, is having these, one, recognizing, and two, having healthy boundaries as it relates to your housing and your money and your mental health. So I also, real quick, before I jump into my story, I want to share this Dr. Rumani here. She's on YouTube, and her channel specializes in helping people heal from narcissistic relationships. I would highly recommend that people also, if they have a few minutes and they know someone who's narcissistic, or if they think maybe they have some tendencies, that they should look into that on this channel. She does a really great job. In the book, the author talks about humans having 3 levels of narcissism. Level number 1 is actually healthy narcissism, or like a low level, where basically you want recognition for things that you work really hard for. And so that is like, winning an award and then wanting to share that because you earned it. Number 2 that he talks about is like mid-level narcissism, which is people who post on social media 25 times a day because they're looking for attention. That's the example that he gets, or he gives. And then the 3rd level that he talks about is people who, it's unhealthy narcissism, or even dangerous, where essentially maybe somebody in a position of power knows how to manipulate others, and they'll take advantage of them and make the other person think that they're completely crazy, when really it's the narcissist who is manipulating the situation. And so that is where my story starts.
And I would say, just real quick, that
Yeah.
that's more of what we are going to deal with, right? That's going to be the extreme. Those are going to be the people that get themselves put in the penal system, or they're in a cycle where they really can't see a way out, and they just don't know why they're in that situation. So tell us what happened. Did you get in a situation, or somebody?
Well, I know quite a few people who I could recognize as narcissistic, and have, right? Because he talks about we all have this level. So what is your level? And that level can change throughout your lifetime. And so I think we do at Katie's House Foundation, in the houses where we have older individuals, or, just people who have been through recovery, they want to have a peaceful life and a peaceful day. And so they stay away from people who are causing mayhem, meaning in their life, like it's unhealthy. And then, people who maybe are in the thick of not recognizing that they are either doing this, or people around them are doing this. And so in my case, I actually dated somebody, and I was coming out of a roommate housing situation, like an aged out foster care situation. And I thought it would be better to live with this individual who turned out to be my supervisor. I was 20 years old at the time, 19 or 20. And he was completely abusive, physically and mentally. I mean, to the point where I had to jump out of like a moving vehicle, versus getting like physically beat up. And I had to in leaving the house, because I was locked into a lease with this gentleman, and he moved in his friends, and he was my boss. So my money was tied to him. My promotions were tied to him. My housing was tied to him. And I felt very isolated, and being verbally abusive to me. He made me feel like this was a me problem. And the truth is that I just had to get out of that housing situation. That was number 1. And I ended up, luckily, I had a friend who let me rent a room, and her parents were nice enough to let me live there, and I was able to keep my job. He actually, I guess, he went off the rails at work, and he ended up getting himself fired, like all kind of at the same time, and for punching his supervisor.
But it might have actually been part of that control piece that he had over you, that when you took that control away, that he went off the rails because of several things. But you taking the initiative and realizing what was going on and making that move probably also affected him.
I would agree with you. Now that I listen to Dr. I think it's Romani, that's what she says is when you come to this, she calls it something like real clarity or something. And when you start to put up these boundaries and change your environment, the people around you react to that. And if they are angry people, they become more angry at everybody.
Yeah.
And
And so
what ended up happening, I just want to share with you. What ended up happening is I actually had to move out during bank hours when we were both supposed to be at work. And I had to actually call some friends who were movers, and they came to the house. They packed up all of my belongings in secrecy, and they moved it to a storage unit and put all my belongings into a storage unit because I had to spend about 6 months living and recovering, not from drugs and alcohol, but from this abusive mentally and physical relationship. So I actually rented a room, and I ended up meeting a really great guy who was not like that at all. And he didn't even understand because he doesn't come from that kind of a lifestyle or anything. But essentially, I had to get my mind right and decompress from that situation and just completely cut ties with that person. And that's when my new life began. And that's what Katie's House Foundation is intended to do. And the Normalize Money project and show, I just want people to listen to this audiobook and recognize that these are laws of being a human, an animal, not something that you need to take on yourself and say, this is always how your life is going to be, or this is how the people are always going to be. Your environment can change your situation.
and not only your environment, but your thinking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've got to first remove yourself from the toxicity.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. And but being able to have a place to look for shared housing and having a place that you know that you can go to get out of that situation is half the battle.
It really is. Housing first, because, right, you need to be able to sleep to have your mind right. And if you
Right.
can't sleep because you feel unsafe, I don't think anything else ever really falls into place.
Yeah. So, those of those people that are in that situation and they do find a place at Katie's house, and they're taking these classes. I think it's really important too that they do follow through with these lessons because each of these lessons gives them one more head up the rung of the ladder, if I may use that analogy, to get to where they actually want to be.
Yeah, because you can save the money. And that's what becomes really important when you're living at Katie's House Foundation or at a house that works for you, is not to stir up drama, right? It's a little bit boring because your life is not filled with change and confusion and negative, like excitement, if you will, like drama. So you have to find other things to do. And I'll just tell you, I ended up putting my time into my work. I remember my boss at the time even saying, like, we don't live to work, we work to live. But for me, for about 2 years, all I did was work because that was how I spent my time, and I saved my money. And then I bought a house at the age of 23 years old, and I got married.
Yeah.
And
On that note, if you found value in this content, like and subscribe for us. I also wanted to mention that we'll be launching the shelter registry coming up here in October of 2023. We're going to put a link below, but you can also find it on katieshousefoundation.org. There should be a link right on the top of the page there. Have a great day. Make it a good week.